The Maternal Thread by C.J. Van Pletsen. The Disk of the Throne. Snow still clung to the Carpathians like an afterthought, though winter's grasp was loosening. The Rodna peaks glowed beneath a pale moon, jagged crowns shimmering like the teeth of a hidden beast. Uri'el and Samuel pressed on, their breath white against the air, boots biting ice that crunched with the sharpness of glass. Behind them, the echoes of the Securitate pursuit had faded, but neither trusted silence. Silence had betrayed too many men before. They had escaped the solstice ambush by threads. Father Georg was gone, dragged away by men in long coats and harder eyes, likely never to return. The table of the Anakim remained sealed in its basalt cradle, guarded now not only by stone, but by armies of secrets. They had touched it, yes. Uri'el had felt its resonance, the way the glyphs on its face pulsed faintly like a second heart. Samuel had too, and that, Uri'el knew, was what unsettled Renard most of all. For in that cave the prophecy had shifted. Renard's pale eyes had widened not at Uri'el but at Samuel, whose mere presence before the table stirred inscriptions no scholar could name. Samuel, the boy from the Cape Vineyards, descendant of Tiro the fighter, no prophet, no scholar. Yet the stone itself had sung at his feet. They did not speak of it until they reached the safety of a ruined watchtower overlooking the valley. Its walls were split, its roof torn, but it stood as if daring history to erase it. Uri'el leaned against the cold stone. You felt it. Samuel did not pretend otherwise. It felt like it knew me, as if the stone had been waiting all this time for my hand to brush against it. Uri'el turned toward him, the faint firelight of their lantern catching the sharp angles of his face. My grandfather used to say the Brotherhood miscounted the players. They looked only for the heir and the witness. But there was a third, the shield. He told Tiro as much, I think. Why else leave 3 barrels in the cellar? Samuel grinned, despite the tension. Always back to the barrels. I thought that was just your family's way of storing wine. No, Uri'el said quietly, eyes steady. Zuriel never wasted a symbol. The first barrel was mine, the heirloom of vision, the disc. The second was meant for the line of women, the orb of stars. The third, he reached out, placing a hand on Samuel's shoulder. The third was for you, the shield. Zuriel knew Leora would be kept away, hidden by my mother, maybe even my father. He prepared for the absence. He knew prophecy bends, but it does not break. For once, Samuel could not answer with jest. His jaw tightened. And you think me that shield? I don't think, Uri'el said. I know. The table itself confirmed it. Samuel looked down at his scarred hands, flexing them. I always thought my worth was just fists and laughter. Uri'el smiled. The first real smile in days. And maybe it is. Do not dismiss either. Sometimes it is laughter that holds men upright when prophecy weighs too much. The cavern's secret. 2 nights later, when the echoes of pursuit had thinned, and the mountains swallowed the last gunfire into silence, Uri'el and Samuel turned their steps back toward the Rodna cave. They did not take the broad track men of armies or hunters might follow, for Renard was a soldier of shadows, and wire, the kind who left snares for the unwary and patience enough to wait until blood froze in the snow. Instead, they climbed by a shepherd's trail, an old path whispered into Uriel's ears years ago by Father Georg, the parish priest who knew both psalms and passes, both scripture and stone. It was no more than a seam in the mountainside, a rib of rock barely wide enough for boots, carved by goats before men. The air grew thinner as they climbed, their breath hanging like incense against the black firs. Snow crusted the path, brittle and treacherous. Each step broke through the fragile skin of ice into drifts of powder that swallowed the ankle, whispering of hidden depths beneath. The cold gnawed like a wolf at exposed skin, and their garments patched wool, damp leather, were armor enough only because will drove them forward. By dawn they reached the mouth of the cave, and there Samuel's laughter died, frozen like a river under sudden frost. The sight robbed him of his easy tongue, silenced even his instinct for jest. For the cavern did not lie empty, nor unchanged. The basalt slab still held the tablet's surface a monolith of darkness, hewn by hands that had measured millennia in silence. Yet before it, half buried in an alcove the mountain itself seemed to have birthed, lay another relic. It was smaller, humbler at first glance, a disk no larger than a man's spread hand, but carved from mineral that caught the pale light of morning as though fire itself had been trapped within stone. The air around it shimmered faintly, a warmth impossible in that frozen chamber. Uri'el stepped closer, breath shallow. The alcove seemed not merely a hollow, but an altar, as though the mountain had guarded this secret through ages of empire and ruin. He reached down. The disk stirred at his nearness, as though it recognized flesh that carried a certain blood. His fingers brushed it, and heat coursed into his palm. Not the heat of flame, but of life, like the pulse of another heart answering his own. Symbols shimmered on its surface, ancient etchings that first appeared dead and inert, then rippled like water struck by a hidden wind. Lines unfolded into rivers, rivers into constellations, constellations into a living map. Uri'el saw stars wheel above him, though no sky lay open. For a heartbeat, all time collapsed. Rome burning, Zion weeping, Babel rising, futures unborn, all twined in one spiral of light. He staggered, clutching the relic, throat constricted with awe and terror alike. This was no trinket left by wandering masons or pious monks. This was the thing Zuriel had whispered of, not in casual teaching, but in the low voice of covenant. The hidden word carried across generations like a psalm half-sung, the disk of the throne. Behind him, Samuel's boots scraped stone as he stepped forward, eyes wide but steady. He was always steady. The shield must be, even when the bearer faltered. His hand closed over Uriel's arm, grounding him. "What is it?" Samuel asked, his voice rough, stripped of humor. Uri'el could barely shape the words, for they carried weight like mountain stone. "The key of Anak," he whispered. "Without it, the throne of the covenant never answers." Samuel's swallow was audible in the hollow air. His gaze lingered not on the relic, but on Uri'el, as though the danger was not in the disk itself, but in what it might demand of the hand that held it. His voice lowered to a confession, and with it, Uri'el closed his fist around the disk. He felt it thrum against his skin, like a living pulse, like a question that did not relent. His breath slowed. Images rose unbidden. Vineyards burning, seas parting, crowns dissolving into ash. Zuriel's voice wove itself into his thoughts. Fire or covenant, ruin or endurance. "The world burns," he said, his own voice sounding distant in his ears. "Or it endures. That is for us to decide." The cavern seemed to lean closer, as though stone itself listened. Outside, the mountain winds howled through the Rodna peaks, but within, silence sealed them, thick as prophecy. The disk glowed once more, then dimmed, as if waiting for the hour appointed. Uri'el pressed it to his chest and felt his heartbeat answer. For the first time since the vineyard hills of the Cape, he feared not Renard's pursuit, nor the Legion's iron, nor even the bloodline war itself. He feared only the weight of choice, the choice Zuriel had known would come. and had hidden in these stones until a son of the promise was ready to bear it. And in that dim cavern, before the silent table of the Anakim, the two friends stood, one holding the key, the other standing guard. Threads of prophecy tightened around them, invisible but unbreakable. The world beyond the mountains slept, unaware. But the covenant had shifted, and the disk had awakened. Renard's fury. But they were not alone. The cavern, which moments before had felt like a cathedral buried beneath ice, now seemed a snare sprung tight. Out of the stillness, a voice cut calm, measured, cold as winter water breaking over stone. "You found it, Renard." He stepped from the shadows as though he had always been there, carved from the same basalt that birthed the table. The rifle in his hands did not waver. Its barrel tracked like a needle of fate, steady and merciless. Torchlight caught the frost on his coat, the pale scar along his jaw, the glacial gleam of eyes that did not shine with triumph, but with hunger. Behind him, the cave mouth darkened. Two soldiers flanked the entrance, hard men with stubbled jaws, rifles lifted, eyes narrowed in the discipline of killers who obeyed without question. Their breath smoked in the air, but their hands held triggers with an eagerness that spoke of violence long rehearsed. Uri'el did not move. He felt the disk throb in his palm, a steady flame that refused to bow before cold steel. The warmth was not only in his skin, but in his marrow, like an ember planted there generations ago, now stirred awake. His voice rang sharper than the cavern's silence. "You have followed my family's trail too long. It will not end with you holding this." Renard's jaw tightened, as if the words struck where bullets could not. His reply came through clenched teeth, measured but edged. "You think it belongs to you, to the Brotherhood? No. It belongs to order, to the bloodline that has never forgotten what your grandfather's arrogance destroyed." Uriel's stomach clenched. Order. Always their word. Order as mask for dominion, for empire, for chains. Samuel shifted, subtle but unmistakable, his shoulder angling to place himself between his friend and the rifle's line. He did not need to speak, but speak he did, low and biting. "Your bloodline." Renard's lips curled in something between a sneer and a confession. "At least you see it, boy. You felt it at the table. You are marked by it too. But you will not survive long enough to learn why." For a breath, silence thickened. Uriel studied him, this man who should have been nothing more than a soldier, a blade in another's hand. Yet Renard spoke with the gravity of one who bore memory, not his own, as though his veins carried centuries of bitterness. His words dripped with more than orders. They were heavy with inheritance, with vendetta dressed in discipline. Uriel's voice sharpened, cutting into that shadow. "You talk like a man who carries more than orders." And there, just for a flicker, Renard faltered. His rifle held steady, but his eyes betrayed a depth beyond command. Something darker moved in him, older than the Legion, older than uniforms and rifles, a ghost of crown and covenant. For a moment, Uriel thought he glimpsed the enemy Zuriel had warned of, not the man, but the line speaking through him. Then the pause cracked. Samuel moved first, always the shield. His body was not thought but instinct, a wall that leapt into the storm. He lunged, shoulder colliding with steel, knocking Renard's rifle aside. The shot rang out, shattering stone, sparking against cavern walls. Thunder rolled in that hollow. Uriel seized the moment. He hurled the lantern from his hand, and fire blossomed in the dark. The oil kissed the air, flame blooming across the soldiers' faces. One cursed, another flinched, eyes blinded in sudden blaze. The cavern roared alive. Gunfire spat in staccato bursts. Echoes multiplied until it seemed a legion of rifles filled the hollow. Stone splintered, stalactites cracked. Ice rained down in jagged shards that glittered like falling glass. Uri'el ran. Samuel's hand shoved him forward, the shield urging the air with laughter forced between ragged breaths. "Run faster, heir of prophecies. This shield can't block bullets forever." Uri'el almost laughed. Almost. The words burned with courage, but the weight in his hand allowed no levity. The disc pulsed, a star pressed into his flesh, heavy as judgment. His smile twisted into resolve, grim and unyielding. They dashed deeper into the cavern, lungs burning, hearts hammering with both fear and something more ancient. Their boots skidded on stone slick with ice, sparks of gunfire chasing them like lightning from behind. Shadows lunged and recoiled in the firestorm. Then a fissure, a crack in the cavern wall, narrow as a wound torn by the mountain itself. They hurled themselves into it, scraping shoulders, tearing cloth, stumbling through blackness until the stone gave way to open air. They emerged onto the cliffs. Snow greeted them, blinding in the sudden dawn. Their bodies slid down rock and ice, tumbling, clawing for grip. Powder and stone cascaded with them in an avalanche of desperate escape. The valley below rose up like a maw, swallowing them whole. Behind, in the hollow of the cavern, Renard's voice broke at last. Not calm now, not measured. It was a sound dragged from some pit deeper than rage, a scream, not of defeat, but of vengeance deferred, a sound that promised pursuit, a vow carried on wind and mountain, the kind of cry that did not end with the man, but with the bloodline. Uri'el heard it echo even as the snow embraced him, even as Samuel's laughter masked terror. He knew the sound would follow them into every road, every ruin, every gate yet unopened. For then Disk was theirs, but so too was the fury it had awakened. The Brotherhood's echo. They lay hidden in a hunter's hut, tending wounds with cloth torn from their shirts. Uri'el placed the disc between them, its glow faint even in darkness. Samuel stared at it. "So this is one of them." "One of three," Uri'el said. "The disc, the orb, the staff." Zuriel always wrote in triads. 3 keys for 3 players. And we've got the first. Samuel leaned back, exhaustion pulling at his features. Then his grin returned, crooked, unbreakable. "Not bad for 2 boys from the Cape." Uri'el smirked. "1 boy from the Cape. 1 from the blood of Anak." "Don't start with that again," Samuel groaned. "You and your bloodlines. All I know is, I nearly broke my shoulder tackling that rifle. That's my contribution." "It may yet save us all," Uri'el said, softer. He glanced at his friend. "Do you know why Zuriel left 3 barrels of wine? He told my grandfather the first was for the heir, the second for the witness, the third for the shield. He knew my sister would be hidden from prophecy. He knew you would stand in her place until she returned." Samuel blinked, silence washing over him. "And you believe that?" "I remember it," Uri'el whispered, eyes dark with conviction. "Through the blood. The same memory that makes me draw maps I've never seen. The same memory that told me this disc was waiting." Samuel chuckled, but there was no mockery in it. "Then Zuriel must have known I'd make you laugh when no one else could. He knew prophecy without laughter is just tyranny." Uri'el actually laughed this time, the sound low and human in the frozen night. For a moment, the world felt survivable.